For most of my life, I have been a huge fan of comic books, superheroes, comics featuring superheroes, and movies based on comics that just so happen to center around superheroes. For years, I have hailed Alan Moore's Watchmen as the single most important graphic novel ever brought to print. Aside from being a great story in its own right, it dared to question the efficacy of what it meant to be a superhero, whether there's a place for heroes in society, and whether or not that same society would either embrace or reject their existence. Moore's writing and Gibbons' art went deep into the mind of the comic book hero, peeling back the layers, giving us a window into the psyche of these heroes. Flawed and naturally human in most respects, many of these costumed Avengers can be seen as a deconstruction, a realistic look at what these characters would be like in a real-world construct. And through the magic of comic book panels and well-written dialogue, we can see that they're a far cry from the heroes who inspired them. You'll find no Batcaves, Fortress of Solitudes, or dutiful butlers on any page. Instead, we get abject truth, that if this was a world of heroes, many of them may not be the best of defenders, or maybe too broken to actually change the world. Watchmen is still as relevant now as it was back in '86, and the list of comics inspired by it is near fathomless. And while many have done their best to tackle the idea of heroes living within a real-world context, none have done it better, at least in this guy's opinion, than The Boys, Amazon's flagship series based on the comic of the same name. The Boys feels like a logical evolution of Moore's original concept, exploring how the world would accept heroes in a modern construct and how they would be welcomed. And while they hardly mirror each other in terms of story, they work to represent the times they reflected. In The Boys, superheroes are a beloved bunch. They're celebrities, often taking selfies with fans, participating at events, and promoting beliefs they don't practice. But above all, the Seven's ultimate goal is to do one thing: sell an image. What separates The Boys from Watchmen is the role that supers play in its expertly established universe. The members of the Seven are not paragons of justice. They're deeply selfish, arrogant, cruel, manipulative, and don't care about the world or the people who walk beneath their tower. All this ties back to the company behind their stardom, and their very existence for that matter, Vought. Imagine if superheroes were every bit as popular as the movies they starred in. Now imagine if there was a company who acted as a sort of representative to all supers, where every need imaginable is handled. That's Vought. That's the universe we're occupying here. Instead of our own superhero team being a private organization, they are literally owned and operated by a conglomerate. This is how The Boys does its best to separate itself from the typical comic book story. Vought sells the faux idyllic image of a superhero through two things: perception and publicity. And the story does this brilliantly through the lens of Starlight. At first, she's beyond happy to join the Seven, only to find out that all is not as it seems. The Seven may look good in pictures and on social media posts, but that's the point. They're meant to. Starlight gets to see firsthand how rattled and narcissistic they truly are. The scene that perfectly captures the essence of Vought as a whole is when Starlight goes rogue to save a young woman from being beaten and raped, only to be chewed out by her handler later on for her actions. It's here that she quickly learns that being a member of the Seven isn't about saving people and protecting the weak at your own discretion. It's about making sure you do so long as there's a smartphone or a camera crew on standby. This is a complete inverse to Watchmen's world, a world where superheroes were once beloved icons, only to be made outlawed criminals as the decades went on. Those who survived are left with only their memories of the good old days, what it felt like to throw on a costume and save people. And some like Rorschach have refused their mandatory retirement and continue to do what they can, while flying under the radar. Manhattan and the comedian get to keep using their titles and their respective talents, as long as they use them for the government, that is. In Watchmen, heroes serve their purpose and are quickly cast aside and forgotten once politics, the government bill, and public perception force them out of the spotlight. When the comic starts, most of the characters seem content, at least dialogue-wise, to be living normal lives. They don't see a point in trying to defend a society that doesn't want them around anymore. So both stories are pretty similar in how they present a realistic look at how superheroes would be received in the worlds they live in. Watchmen is a mostly grounded book, and the movie wasn't too bad. It's a study about who's behind the mask and whether the world is worth saving. While The Boys plays on today's public fascination with superheroes, judging by how in our world, superhero movies, tie-in comics, and spin-off shows are popping up everywhere, and probably will be for a foreseeable future. It mirrors a reality that isn't too far off from the one we're currently living in. But it's really the viewpoint characters that help to give us perspective and let us decide which side of the fence we land on. Watchmen's got its fair share of viewpoints that you can either relate to or find fault in. Maybe you can find some common ground with Rorschach's brutal punishment without compromise mentality. Or maybe you gravitate towards the Dr. Manhattan's view of time where everything, including free will, is simply an illusion. The world's a stage and we're all its puppets, with Manhattan being a puppet who can see the strings. Can the world really be changed if true change is out of our hands or simply beyond us? The Boys is a great service of showing us multiple viewpoints, giving us a different perspective of every character. Huey starts out as a young man just gliding through life, working at a store that would probably become his career job. He's awkward, not very brave, and takes life as it's given to him. That is until his girlfriend Robin is turned into human slush by A-Train, a hero he once admired. The death of his love, the lies put out by the media, and the drive to do something about it is what sets him on his path and what puts him on Butcher's radar. Butcher in many ways is our white rabbit into this world. He's the first one to get to Huey and open his eyes to the truth behind all the lies that Vought manages to carefully sweep under the rug. It's through their mission to bring down the Seven that we get to see how corrupt and hypocritical Vaught's heroes actually are. Butcher may want to tear them all down, but a Lex Luthor archetype he is not. He's just a man tired of keeping his mouth shut and sitting on the sidelines. He wants to take the fight to them, and it's the introduction of Compound V that really sets the Boys apart from most other superhero stories. Compound V being the very serum that creates the supers and gives them their unique abilities. As the series progresses, we see that nearly everything about the Seven, from their epic backstories to their costumes to their image, it's all a fabrication tailor-woven by Vought. There's no mystery, no grand tale of how they got their powers. They weren't chosen by a bolt of lightning, they didn't hail from a far-off island of ancient warriors, and they didn't fall from the sky in a rocket sent from a dying planet. The truth is, they're a manufactured product, nothing more. Everything from their clothing, their titles, their origin story is nothing but a bottled promise. An image meant to grow a company that, like them, isn't concerned about the world they're meant to protect. It's this heavy irony and healthy dose of cynicism that separates the Boys from most comic book conventions. It flips the script and gives people like Butcher and the Boys a chance to fight back, to show that maybe the real heroes of this story aren't the ones who sign autographs or sell movie tickets. It's this ongoing conflict that draws a line in the sand and asks the viewer to pick a side. Do you buy a Homelander Funko and support Vought? Or do you pick up your crowbar, grow out a badass beard, and take a swing? The main purpose of this video essay was to explore the idea of the comic book superhero and determine if there's truly a place for heroes in this world, or worlds close enough to the one we're living on. And one way to do that is to examine the stand-in Superman characters that both series have: Watchmen's Dr. Manhattan, and The Boys' Homelander. In almost every Superman story, film, or comic, he's almost always referred to as a god. He's a powerful being and a symbol of hope, but he's a few powers short of what most people would imagine a godlike superhero to be. Enter Dr. Manhattan, the only hero in Watchmen with any actual powers. Powers that make him a literal god among men. Manhattan can change the world around him, teleport, walk on any surface, create life with the wave of his hand, and I could go on, but I think you get the picture. Just tack on any superpower that comes to mind and Manhattan can pretty much do it. The Superman is real and he is American. But ultimately, it's Manhattan's undefeatable omniscience that keeps him from wanting to be a hero or actually wanting to change the world. Let me explain. Manhattan doesn't experience time the way that most do. Instead, time moves simultaneously for him. Past, present, and future all exist at once. He has no concept of now. He's not seeing the past or the future, he's living it. This gives him a somewhat bleak outlook on the world. He can't change the future because it's already happened and there's no changing course. He's basically Billy Pilgrim with superpowers. I hope the literary savvy portion of my viewership gets that reference. What really sets Manhattan apart from Superman is witnessed in issue 12 of Doomsday Clock. In that issue, Superman fights off the entire pantheon of DC rogues while also trying to protect innocent bystanders. He's got every main baddie coming after him, and he still finds time to save a mother and child. All the while, Manhattan stands and stares, doing absolutely nothing to change the outcome or help Superman. It's enough to piss off the Man of Steel, who angrily demands to know why he won't help. Because he hasn't done it yet. Manhattan finally realizes the difference between himself and Superman. Superman is a man of action, while Manhattan is a man of inaction. Superman can fight, he can be that change, but for Manhattan, there is no change. There's only progression. In 2016 Suicide Squad, Amanda Waller asked the question, what if Superman had decided to tear the roof off the White House? Essentially, what would happen if the most powerful being on our planet wasn't on our side? What if he had a hidden agenda that he kept behind a nice smile and an apparent willingness to protect the human race? The Boy's Homelander isn't too far from doing something like that. Hell, in the comics he's basically done all that and worse. On the surface, he's much closer to the Superman mold than Manhattan is. He's got a cool costume, a nice flowing cape, and his power set is pretty much a 1-to-1 match for the Man of Steel. He may look like Krypton's last son, but as savior, Homelander is not. Holding true to the ideals imparted on him by Vought, Homelander serves as a conduit for the worst humanity has to offer. He's selfish, arrogant, cruel, lazy, and has no interest in doing anything other than boosting his already supersized ego. On camera and on social media, he successfully sells the charade of the all-American Boy Scout who's good with kids, offers selfies at a moment's notice, the ideal hero who wants to be America's first line of defense. That's the image being sold to the public, but when the cameras are off and the fans are at least 800 feet below Vought's tower, the real Homelander comes out. And he doesn't give a damn about anyone but himself. He doesn't save the people or pull off heroic feats because he cares. He's doing it to feed his starving ego, to keep himself loved. The love he gets from the people is pretty one-sided, but he basks in it regardless. A god without love is no god at all. He's a pretender, a dreamer. There's no better character defining moment in the series than the plane scene. While it does a great job of poking holes in the logic found in most superhero films, especially 2006's Superman Returns, this scene actually plays an integral role in showing us who Homelander really is. The whole scene places an alternate reality to what would have happened if Superman decided that the innocent souls aboard a flying plane weren't worth saving. While he absolutely could have saved everyone on board, he quickly made up his mind that the people weren't worth the effort. Their lives are quickly written off as a failed attempt at amplifying his popularity. It's a truly frightening scene. All those lives lost, they were failed by the very faith they gifted their would-be savior. That may have been a lot to digest, but you get the point. The only real question left to answer is this. Would either of these Supermen really be a great protector of humanity? In short, the answer would be no, and definitely not. Superheroes are silly, fun, and a great escape from the reality we're often forced to live in. It's fun to imagine ourselves somewhere between the panels of our favorite comic book, existing in a world where our heroes exist and we know nothing about them other than what they choose to share with us. Watchmen and The Boys do a great job of putting superheroes in the real world and letting them decide who they want to be. Not as heroes or villains, but as characters with a choice. Maybe you believe a world of heroes would make people feel safer, or maybe your faith lies elsewhere. There's no clear answer but what we choose to live with. And with that, I'll let you be the judge. I leave it entirely in your hands.